Many people believe that thinking is automatic, that because the mind produces thoughts, it must already know how to think. But this is not true. Just as the body must be trained to become strong, the mind must be guided to become clear. Wrong thinking leads to confusion, suffering, and wasted energy. Correct thinking brings clarity, peace, and strength. Today, I will share with you how to cultivate the ability to think correctly, so that your decisions, your actions, and ultimately your life will no longer be shaped by chaos, but by awareness. Most people live under the impression that thinking is something that does not require training. They assume that, because thoughts naturally arise in the mind, it means they are already thinking in the correct way. But this is one of the greatest misunderstandings. To think is not simply to allow the mind to wander from one idea to the next. To think correctly is a discipline. It requires awareness. It requires self-control, and it requires the willingness to observe the movements of the mind with honesty. Just like a river that can flow calmly and nourish everything along its banks, the mind too can be a source of peace and clarity. But the same river, when disturbed by storms and floods, becomes destructive, uncontrolled, and dangerous. In the same way, a mind that has never been trained in correct thinking can turn against the one who possesses it. When the mind is left in its raw and untrained state, it constantly jumps between the past and the future. It recalls memories, often filled with regrets, mistakes, and unhealed wounds. At the same time, it projects into the future, creating worries, fears, and endless scenarios of what might go wrong. This constant movement leaves no space for clarity. It creates a storm of confusion that makes decision-making difficult and prevents peace from arising. Correct thinking begins by recognizing this restless nature of the mind and by learning to anchor it in the present moment. Only in the present moment can correct observation take place. Only here and now can we see things as they are, not as they were distorted by memory or as they are feared in imagination. Another aspect of incorrect thinking is the tendency of the mind to judge everything instantly. Whenever we see a person, hear a sound, or encounter a situation, the mind rushes to label it good, bad, pleasant, unpleasant, friend, enemy. This instant labeling often happens without reflection. It is based on habits, conditioning, and personal biases. Such judgments close the door to deeper understanding. Correct thinking, on the other hand, requires pausing before labeling. It means stepping back to observe with neutrality. Instead of immediately deciding whether something is good or bad, the mind waits, investigates, and sees the broader picture. In this pause lies wisdom, because only when you see the whole can you respond with clarity instead of reacting blindly. It is also important to understand that thoughts are not facts. Most people mistake the content of their minds for reality. They believe that because a thought appears, it must be true. But thoughts are nothing more than mental events, clouds passing through the sky of consciousness. Some are useful, others are misleading, and many are completely irrelevant. To think correctly means to develop the capacity to separate helpful thoughts from harmful ones. This requires the ability to observe the thought without being carried away by it. For example, a thought of failure might arise. I am not good enough. If you identify completely with it, it will create fear and paralyze you. But if you can observe it as simply a passing mental event, you gain the power to decide whether to engage with it or let it dissolve. Correct thinking does not mean having only positive thoughts, but it means having the discipline to choose which thoughts deserve your energy and which should be released. Another crucial element of correct thinking is clarity of intention. Many people think constantly, but without a clear direction. Their minds are like ships without a compass, drifting wherever the wind takes them. This creates exhaustion because so much energy is wasted on thoughts that have no purpose. Correct thinking begins with asking, what is my intention? What am I trying to achieve? When the mind has a clear purpose, thoughts begin to align themselves. Instead of scattering in 100 directions, they become organized, structured, and supportive of that purpose. Just like sunlight, when dispersed, is warm but weak, while when focused through a lens becomes powerful enough to ignite fire, the focused mind gains strength through correct thinking. Correct thinking also requires balance between logic and awareness. Logic allows the mind to structure ideas, to weigh evidence, and to analyze cause and effect, but awareness ensures that logic does not become cold, rigid, or disconnected from the reality of life. When logic and awareness work together, thinking becomes both sharp and compassionate. It allows you to make decisions that are not only effective, but also aligned with human values. Too much logic without awareness creates arrogance and separation. Too much awareness without structure can lead to confusion and lack of direction. Correct thinking is the art of combining both in harmony. The training of correct thinking also involves self-honesty. The mind is very skilled at deceiving itself. It creates excuses, justifications, and illusions to avoid facing uncomfortable truths. It convinces itself that harmful habits are harmless, that negative emotions are justified, and that failure is always caused by others. Such self-deception prevents growth. Correct thinking requires the courage to confront the truth, even when it is unpleasant. It means asking oneself difficult questions and being willing to see the answers without distortion. This honesty may be uncomfortable in the beginning, but it is the foundation of freedom. Because only when illusions are removed can one see reality clearly and act upon it wisely. One of the most powerful realizations in life is the understanding that the quality of your thinking directly shapes the quality of your life. Every action you take, every habit you build, and every path you follow begins first in the mind. Before a person speaks, they must think. Before they act, they must decide. Before they achieve anything, they must imagine the possibility. This means that if the foundation of your thinking is unstable, then everything built upon it will also be unstable. But if your thinking is rooted in clarity, strength, and awareness, then the life that unfolds from it will carry the same qualities. The mind is not just a passive observer of reality, it is the architect of reality. To think correctly is to build a strong structure for your life, one that can withstand challenges, changes, and uncertainty. Correct thinking is not something that happens by chance. It is cultivated through training, reflection, and discipline. Just as you cannot expect the body to become strong without exercise, you cannot expect the mind to become clear without deliberate practice. The way most people think is shaped by external influences. From childhood, they absorb the beliefs of parents, teachers, culture, and society. They form habits of thought without realizing it, and those habits continue to operate in the background for the rest of their lives. These thought patterns influence how they see themselves, how they see others, and how they respond to challenges. If those patterns are negative or distorted, they create suffering. If they are aligned with awareness and truth, they create growth. To think correctly means to take responsibility for examining these patterns, to see which ones serve you and which ones hold you back. When you begin to train the mind, you will notice how restless it is. Thoughts arise one after another, often without connection or purpose. Some are repetitive, circling the same fears, regrets, or desires. Others are distractions, pulling attention toward things that have no real value. The untrained mind becomes like a noisy room where dozens of voices are speaking at once, each demanding attention, leaving you unable to focus on what matters. Correct thinking is the ability to silence the unnecessary voices and listen only to what is essential. It is the ability to recognize which thoughts carry weight and which are empty noise. When this ability develops, your actions naturally become more precise, your energy more focused, and your results more meaningful. Correct thinking also involves the practice of perspective. A narrow mind sees only one side of a situation and reacts based on that limited view. A broad mind sees many sides and responds with wisdom. Most conflicts in life come from narrow thinking. People become attached to their own viewpoint, convinced that it is the only truth, and they refuse to see beyond it. This creates arguments, division, and suffering. Correct thinking requires stepping out of this narrowness and recognizing that every situation has multiple dimensions. When the mind is trained to shift perspectives, it no longer clings to rigid ideas. Instead, it adapts, learns, and grows. This flexibility is one of the greatest strengths of correct thinking, because life is never fixed, and a rigid mind will always break under pressure. A flexible mind, however, flows with change and remains strong. Another important quality of correct thinking is the ability to separate what is within your control from what is not. Many people spend enormous amounts of energy worrying about things they cannot change. They replay the past, hoping it could have been different. They fear the future, imagining problems that may never occur. This misuse of thought drains energy and prevents progress. Correct thinking means recognizing that your power lies only in the present moment and in the actions you can take now. Everything else is outside of your reach. By focusing only on what you can influence, you preserve your energy and use it wisely. This way of thinking brings not only effectiveness, but also peace, because it frees you from the burden of carrying what does not belong to you. Correct thinking is also deeply connected to self-discipline. The mind by nature seeks comfort, ease, and avoidance of effort. It resists challenges, prefers distraction, and often chooses the path of least resistance. But growth never comes from comfort. Growth comes from the willingness to confront discomfort, to push beyond limits, and to train consistently. To think correctly means to recognize that discipline is not punishment, but freedom. The discipline of training the body makes it strong. The discipline of training the mind makes it clear. Without discipline, thoughts drift aimlessly, controlled by habits and impulses. With discipline, thoughts align with intention, and intention aligns with action. This is how true progress is made. At the heart of correct thinking lies awareness. Awareness is the light that illuminates the mind. Without awareness, thoughts operate unconsciously, driven by emotion and habit. With awareness, you begin to notice the patterns, to question them, and to choose differently. Awareness allows you to step back from your thoughts and observe them without being consumed by them. This observation itself is a form of liberation, because the moment you see that you are not your thoughts, but the one who observes them, you gain freedom from their control. This freedom is what allows correct thinking to arise, because only when the mind is free can it see things as they are, not as it imagines them to be. The greatest obstacle to correct thinking is not the lack of intelligence, but the influence of emotions that cloud the mind. When anger arises, thinking becomes sharp but destructive. When fear arises, thinking becomes limited and narrow. When desire arises, thinking becomes biased and impatient. All of these emotions are natural parts of human life, but if they are allowed to dominate the mind, they distort the ability to think clearly. Just as muddy water cannot reflect the sky, a disturbed mind cannot reflect reality. To think correctly, one must learn how to calm the inner waters so that clarity returns. This does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending they do not exist. It means recognizing them as passing waves and learning how to let them rise and fall without being carried away by them. Every emotion carries with it a certain type of thought. For example, when a person feels jealousy, the mind automatically produces comparisons, judgments, and imagines scenarios of what others have that they lack. When a person feels guilt, the mind produces self-punishing thoughts that repeat over and over. These thoughts feel real in the moment, but they are only extensions of the emotional state. Correct thinking requires the ability to separate thought from emotion. This separation comes from awareness. The moment you recognize, this is anger, and these are the thoughts arising from anger, you are already stepping outside of the cycle. Awareness creates space, and in that space you regain the ability to choose. Training this separation is not easy because the pull of emotion is strong. But with practice, the mind learns to remain steady even when emotions move through it. Imagine a mountain standing unmoved while clouds pass across the sky. The mountain does not resist the clouds, but it also does not follow them. In the same way, correct thinking is the capacity to remain grounded while emotions come and go. This steadiness allows you to respond instead of react. A reaction is automatic, driven by emotion. A response is deliberate, guided by awareness. The difference between these two can determine the outcome of an entire situation. Another dimension of correct thinking is the recognition of how deeply habits shape the mind. The thoughts you repeat become patterns, and those patterns eventually become beliefs. Once a belief is formed, it acts like a filter through which all experiences are interpreted. If the belief is negative, such as, "I am not capable," then every challenge will be colored by this filter, and the mind will always look for evidence to confirm it. This is why people often feel trapped in cycles of failure or limitation. They are not trapped by external circumstances, but by the patterns of thought they have unconsciously repeated. Correct thinking means becoming aware of these hidden beliefs and questioning them. Instead of asking, "Is this belief comfortable?" the correct question is this belief true? Is it useful? By asking such questions, the mind begins to dismantle false structures and make space for new, empowering patterns. The practice of correct thinking is closely connected with the ability to focus. A scattered mind cannot think correctly because its energy is divided in too many directions. Focus gathers energy into a single point. It allows the mind to penetrate deeply into a subject instead of skimming across the surface. Focus also brings stillness, and in stillness clarity naturally arises. Training focus can begin with simple exercises, such as bringing attention fully to the breath, to a movement, or to a single task without distraction. These exercises strengthen the mental muscles that later allow you to concentrate during moments of difficulty, decision, or crisis. Without focus, thoughts remain shallow. With focus, they become powerful and precise. Correct thinking also demands humility. The mind that believes it already knows everything stops learning. It defends its opinions, clings to its judgments, and resists correction. Such a mind becomes closed, and a closed mind cannot grow. Humility opens the door to continuous learning. It allows the recognition that no matter how much knowledge has been gained, there is always more to see, more to understand, more to refine. This openness does not weaken thinking, it strengthens it. Because correct thinking is not about being right all the time. It is about being willing to see more clearly, even if it means admitting a mistake or changing a perspective. Another essential quality is patience. The mind often wants quick answers, immediate solutions, instant results. But many of life's questions cannot be solved in a moment. They require time, observation, and gradual unfolding. Correct thinking accepts this process. It is willing to hold a question without rushing to a conclusion. It is willing to let understanding ripen slowly, just as fruit ripens under the sun. Impatience forces answers and creates errors. Patience allows wisdom to emerge naturally, without force. Correct thinking is not only about solving problems or making decisions. It is also about creating harmony within. When the mind thinks in alignment with truth, with clarity, and with awareness, there is less inner conflict. Energy is no longer wasted in self-contradiction. The body feels lighter, the emotions calmer, and the actions more purposeful. In this way, correct thinking is not separate from living. It is not just a mental exercise, but a way of being that touches every part of life. One of the most important aspects of correct thinking is understanding the power of attention. Wherever attention goes, energy flows. The quality of your life is a reflection of what you give your attention to day after day. Most people do not realize how much of their mental energy is consumed by things that do not matter. They spend hours replaying conversations from the past, worrying about outcomes that may never happen, or comparing themselves endlessly to others. This constant scattering of attention drains the mind, leaving it tired, restless, and unfocused. Correct thinking begins with learning to take responsibility for where your attention is placed. It means recognizing that every moment you choose what to feed with your awareness, and what you feed will grow stronger. Attention can be compared to sunlight. When sunlight is dispersed, it provides warmth but lacks intensity. When the same sunlight is focused through a magnifying glass, it gains the power to ignite fire. The mind works in the same way. A scattered mind may produce many thoughts, but they lack direction and strength. A focused mind, however, channels all of its energy toward one purpose, and this creates remarkable results. This is why those who learn to direct their attention consciously can achieve more with less effort, because their energy is not wasted in distraction, but fully invested in the task at hand. The challenge is that the modern world is designed to pull attention in every direction. Notifications, advertisements, and endless streams of information compete for the mind's focus. Without awareness, the mind becomes addicted to this constant stimulation, always looking for the next piece of news, the next update, the next distraction. This weakens the capacity for deep thought and robs life of depth. Correct thinking requires the discipline to withdraw attention from what is shallow and to return it again and again to what is meaningful. It is an ongoing training because distractions will always exist, but the strength of your thinking depends on how well you master your focus. Another layer of attention is the ability to notice not only the outer world, but also the inner world. Most people are more aware of what happens outside of them than what happens inside. They notice the behavior of others, the events around them, but they rarely observe the movements of their own mind. This creates a gap because they do not see how their own thoughts and emotions shape their experience. To think correctly means to direct attention inward as well as outward. It means to notice when a thought begins to arise, when an emotion starts to form, and how these inner movements influence perception. This kind of observation is subtle, but it is the key to self-mastery. Attention also determines the kind of person you become. If your attention is constantly placed on negative news, on gossip, or on the mistakes of others, then your mind will be filled with negativity. If your attention is placed on gratitude, on learning, and on what can be improved, then your mind will grow in positivity and strength. What you repeatedly focus on becomes the environment in which your mind lives. Just as a seed planted in poor soil cannot grow into a strong tree, a mind fed with negativity cannot produce clarity or wisdom. Correct thinking is nourished by attention to what uplifts, what educates, and what expands understanding. One of the simplest yet most powerful practices for training attention is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the deliberate act of bringing awareness fully to the present moment. It can be practiced while breathing, while eating, while walking, or while engaging in any ordinary task. The essence of mindfulness is to give complete attention to what is happening now, without letting the mind wander into past or future. This practice gradually strengthens the ability to focus, because the more often you return to the present, the more natural it becomes to keep your attention where you choose. With mindfulness, the mind becomes less reactive, more stable, and more capable of correct thinking. Correct thinking also requires learning how to direct attention towards solutions instead of problems. When faced with challenges, the untrained mind becomes fixated on obstacles, replaying them again and again without moving forward. This fixation increases stress and reduces clarity. The trained mind, however, acknowledges the problem, but then shifts attention to possible actions, to what can be done, to the next step forward. This shift in attention transforms the energy of the mind. Instead of being trapped in helplessness, it becomes active, creative, and solution-oriented. The ability to guide attention toward what is useful is one of the greatest skills of correct thinking. Attention is also deeply connected to intention. Without intention, attention becomes unstable, moving wherever external forces push it. With intention, attention gains direction and purpose. Every morning when you wake up, the mind begins to think, but if you start the day without a clear intention, your attention will scatter across random thoughts and external distractions. If you begin the day with a clear intention, whether it is to learn, to grow, to remain calm, or to accomplish a specific task, then your attention has an anchor. It becomes easier to resist distraction because your energy is already committed to something meaningful. Correct thinking is the alignment of intention and attention so that what you focus on serves the deeper purpose you have chosen. When we speak about correct thinking, we are not speaking about adding more to the mind. We are speaking about removing what is unnecessary, what is distorted, and what is harmful, so that clarity can naturally arise. Correct thinking is not about filling the mind with noise, but about training it to see clearly, to focus deeply, and to act with intention. A strong body allows you to move with freedom. A strong mind allows you to live with freedom. The way you think will shape the way you speak, the way you act, and the way you experience this life. If you train the body without training the mind, you remain incomplete. But if you learn to guide your thoughts with awareness, with discipline, and with humility, then every action that follows will be aligned with wisdom. This is why learning how to think correctly is not just a practice for today. It is a practice for life. It is a way to protect your energy, to preserve your peace, and to direct your path. The storms of life will come, emotions will rise, and challenges will test you. But the one who has trained the mind to think correctly will not be lost in the storm. Instead, they will remain steady, they will remain aware, and they will move forward with clarity.